Hello folks, we're back once more with yet another marvelous anime video. If you're a fan of anime, Bleach is a series that you've probably watched or at least heard of at some point during your life. Such is the pervasive influence of Tite Kubo's seminal Shounen series that it has repeatedly been listed among the greatest of all time. For those of us who grew up watching this series, Bleach was what Dragonball Z was for the teens of the late 80s and early 90s. It absolutely spoke to us thanks to the masterfully created world and the deep lore that accompanied it, along with its captivating art style and character design. The iconic fight choreography and soundtracks were just the cherry on top. Just like the most well-crafted universes, Kubo has painstakingly created a world that feels very much lived in with tons of history behind it. The amalgamation of traditional Japanese themes and motifs with modern aesthetics works beautifully to create a bright and vibrant universe with varied shades. However, in the absence of an engaging story and lore, everything else is reduced to nothing more than attractive set dressing. Thankfully for Bleach, Tite Kubo has done a fantastic job regarding the lore, and a great indicator of this is when fans are able to take things from the canon and form speculations and theories around it. This is exactly what Bleach fans have done even before the manga ended in August of 2016. From conspiracy theories to lore speculation, fans have been dissecting every available piece of content to placate their need for a regular dose of Bleach. This is only further fueled by Kubo's occasional reply to these theories and speculations. With the recent resurgence that the series has been enjoying, with the third course of the 1,000 Years Blood War arc having aired a couple of months ago, with a final course yet to come, we thought this was as good a time as any to get into some lore speculation of our own. So please put on your tinfoil hats, hop into the mystery van, and join us as we discuss the top 10 lore theories of Bleach. Before we get too deep into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Soul King did not give up his powers willingly, and he might not be the good guy we believe him to be. If you've been watching the anime or reading the manga, you'll know that the Soul King was an omnipotent and all-powerful entity that was betrayed by the ancestors of the 5 noble houses. They did so to usurp his power and divide the single primordial world into 3 halves, namely Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the world of the living. While doing so, they mutilated and dismembered the Soul King and, as we know, even separated each of his body parts with godlike abilities. The Soul King was left sealed in a cocoon in a state later described by Yuvok as disgraceful, which is hard to argue with. It's been made clear by Kubo that Yuvok wasn't the first individual to possess the ability called the Almighty, which granted him a variety of abilities, the most important of which was prescience. It was, in fact, the original ability of the Soul King which had led fans to theorize that the Soul King had already seen the 5 ancestors attack upon him. Being the all-powerful being that he was, it was surprising for him to have lost so easily to this individual who no doubt might have been mighty themselves but was surely no match for him. It's widely believed that the Soul King allowed his own mutilation and went down without much of a fight, but something about this theory has always not sat well with us. Let us explain. The Soul King already possessed the powers to create these new worlds himself, and if he agreed with their ideas that such a thing was necessary, he could have just collaborated with the usurpers or done it himself. Additionally, the single-eyeballed black creatures that appear when Yuvok absorbs the Soul King's powers are said to be the manifestation of the latter's powers. The fact that they only attack Shinigamis and not Quincy further strengthens our belief that the Soul King didn't go down so amicably in agreement with his aggressor's beliefs. Kubo hasn't really fully fleshed out that era of Bleach, so all we have is speculation. We believe that the Soul King was this benevolent being who rescued the world from the threat of hollows, but as we've come to learn in Bleach, not everything is always what it seems. For the longest time, we thought the Shinigami were the benevolent good guys, but as the series progressed, we learned that they had committed numerous atrocities like genocide and the betrayal of the Soul King. In fact, their entire order is built on lies and murder, so it's not a stretch to say that the Soul King isn't really such a benevolent being and didn't give up his powers willingly, but it was taken from him by force and deceit. We believe that initially, the Soul King's presence was welcomed by the Shinigami as he aided them in their quest to push back the Menos population. However, as the threat of the Hollows began to abate, the existing Shinigami either grew concerned with the amount of power that the Soul King possessed, or they believed that, for whatever reason, they needed his powers to change the status quo of the world so they wouldn't have to go through another struggle like the one they just did. If the latter was true, why couldn't they have simply approached the Soul King and asked for his help instead of doing what they did? As both Shinigami and the Soul King were opposed to the Hollows, we're fairly certain they would have worked together in the past as allies. Yosobei is supposed to have been one of the close confidants of the Soul King, despite being a Shinigami, yet he betrays him. Surely the Soul King, if he was so benevolent, would have agreed to their terms. The fact that he didn't means that he actually disagreed with them. Our theory is that Yosobei played the part of Judas and somehow managed to lower Ryo's guard, allowing the 5 ancestors to execute their brutal plan. We have another very important reason why the Shinigami betrayed the Soul King, but that ties into another one of our theories, which we'll discuss later in this video, so stay tuned to find out more about that. We've been operating under the assumption that just because the Soul King saw the future and the wonders it held, he quietly allowed himself to be mutilated, but that hardly seems to be the case. The final damning evidence of this is the fact that the Shinigami are desperate to make sure that the Soul King is never made whole again. One needs to understand that merely the act of the Soul King becoming whole doesn't automatically destroy the 3 worlds. So, the Shinigami know, or at least seem to think, that if the Soul King regains his might, he'll restore the world back to its primordial state, which would be tantamount to billions of people perishing. This makes us conclude that the Soul King is not this benevolent, self-sacrificing entity at all. Yuvok is not the first Quincy, and the Soul King was betrayed for disrupting the balance. The Emperor of the Wanderreich, Yuvok, is widely regarded as the father of all Quincy, as they have received their powers after receiving a part of his soul. In normal biology, a child inherits the lineage of their parent. If one were to fully believe Yuvok regarding the identity of his parents, wouldn't it make sense that he had inherited his Quincy abilities from them as well? If he has inherited abilities like the Almighty from the Soul King, it shouldn't be a surprise for him to have inherited the rest of his abilities as well. This isn't beyond the realm of possibility because we have seen the Soul King possess abilities that are wild in scope. We know that the Soul King was an existence far different from that of a Shinigami who already existed at that point. Our theory is that the reason that the Soul King and the Shinigami were at odds, resulting in his betrayal, has to do with the way that the Hollows were being destroyed by the Soul King. We believe that the Soul King, just like the later Quincy, was outright destroying the soul when he was killing Hollows instead of purifying it. At some point, the Shinigami realized what was happening and believed it was threatening the balance of the universe. This led to them believing that the only option for them to change the current course was to create a new system that would allow for a proper cycle of souls, but this would never be possible with the existence of the Soul King. The irony of this whole situation was that they needed the power of the Ryo to create and sustain their vision. This could be a valid explanation for why the Shinigami were unable to work together with the Soul King, along with the fact that Tsuneyashiro's ancestors were genuinely also jealous of his power. If Yuvok's powers are inherited, then how can that make him the first Quincy if someone existed before him with similar abilities? Another glaring similarity between the Soul King and Yuvok that supports this theory is how they're able to distribute parts of themselves to others. In the case of the Soul King, according to the Can't Fear Your Own World light novel, Fullbringers have a piece of the Soul King within them that grants them their own extraordinary powers. We know for a fact that Yuvok imbues the Quincy's with a part of his own soul as well to grant them powers. We've already mentioned the Almighty and how both of them share this ability, along with how the creatures that were a manifestation of his powers only attack the Shinigami and not the Quincy. If Yuvok is the father of Quincy and the Soul King is his father, along with all the arguments we've presented so far, doesn't that kind of make the Soul King the proto-Quincy? The noble families and Central 46 plotted the fall of the Shiba clan. There were originally 5 noble clans that sat atop the Shinigami socio-political sphere, comprising the families of the 5 ancestors that usurped the Soul King's power. We were initially introduced to the Kuchiki and Shihoin clans, while the remaining 3 were a mystery. Later, in Can't Fear Your Own World, the nefarious Tsuneyashiro clan is brought into the spotlight as the 3rd confirmed noble family. There's almost no information about the 4th family, but what we do know is that the 5th noble household that no longer holds this status is the Shiba clan. For those of you who are uninitiated to the deeper Bleach lore, the Shiba clan is an extremely prominent family within Soul Society, and their presence and influence is felt within the series, even though they might not hold their lofty rank anymore. Some of Bleach's most important characters belong to this clan, like Ichigo's father, Isshin, Hukaku, Ganju, and Ichigo himself. The circumstances of their fall from grace, if you can even call it that, are dubious to say the least. It's largely implied that the circumstances leading to the death of their leader, Kaien Shiba, is what led to their downfall, but that still doesn't make sense because other noble houses have had their fair share of scandals as well. Kaien Shiba was the lieutenant of the 13th Division under the captaincy of Joshiro Ukitake. He was an extremely skilled Shinigami and was well loved and respected by his subordinates and peers. Kaien also bears an uncanny resemblance to Ichigo. He was killed after his body was taken over by a hollow, leading to Rukia stabbing him and ending his life. The argument is that the fact that a Shinigami of such a high rank, who also happened to belong to a noble house, had died being controlled by a hollow had led to massive disgrace, leading them to be stripped of their rank. However, the Tuna Yashiro clan literally had the leader, Tokunada, go on an all-out war to replace the Soul King himself while taking on the Gotei 13. Despite this, the Tuna Yashiro are still counted among the noble houses in Bleach. Surely, the head of a house represents the entire family, and what Tokunada committed was essentially treason, yet there's no mention of them having their status as a noble family revoked. The inconsistency in this just reeks of foul play and power lobbying. Just because the 5 families worked in tandem to establish the world as it is, doesn't mean that they were friendly towards each other. With each family looking to expand their influence and power over Soul Society, there was a lot of tension as a result of this between them. Especially the Tuna Yashiro family, who held no qualms about employing the most nefarious tactics to gain power and influence over others. The noble families are basically untouchable under normal circumstances and have a major say regarding the running of the Soul Society. Naturally, this results in a lot of political intrigue and power struggle, and any chance to remove a competitor is swiftly taken advantage of. Unlike the other noble houses, the Shiba clan is portrayed as more down-to-earth and not really bothered by their own status. This perhaps led to them not being involved in the power struggle as much, leading to their waning influence. It was probably the Tuna Yashiro who seized the opportunity regarding the incident involving Kaien and pushed Central 46 and the other noble houses to revoke the Shiba's status as a noble clan. Already weakened after the death of their leader and the disappearance of another strong member and a leader of a branch family, Isshin Shiba, the family had faced not only disrepute but also a glaring loss in terms of powerful members. Isshin Shiba was in fact even more highly ranked within the Gotei 13 than Kaien as the former captain of the 10th Division. What is very strange is that nobody seems to have investigated his disappearance, despite the fact that a captain of the Gotei 13 and a member of a noble house had just disappeared from Soul Society. This is problematic because as much as the Tuna Yashiro might have played a role in lobbying the dismissal of the Shiba as a noble family, in the Can't Fear Your Own World novel, Tokunada seems to be in favor of reconciling with the Shiba clan. This leads us to suspect Central 46 might have had a vested interest in seeing them dismissed. As we mentioned earlier, the noble families are nigh untouchable and operate outside the jurisdiction of Central 46 for the most part. We think that this organization feared that if the 5 noble houses were ever to put aside their petty squabbles and power politics and unite, they would easily undermine their station within Soul Society. They therefore were more than eager to use their resources to have the Shiba clan removed from the nobility. One must also mention that Central 46 keeps a tab on the whereabouts of every Shinigami in existence. Hence, as mentioned earlier, it's hard to believe that they never discovered Isshin's location. What we believe is that Isshin was always a wild card and hard to control, so him removing himself from the picture without their intervention served their purpose well, so they left well enough alone. They knew that one of the most powerful Shinigami and a senior member of the Shiba clan had just removed himself from their way, and it would have been counterintuitive and a waste of resources to pursue him. This is further proven by Tokunada's desire to reconcile with the Shiba clan, as he wanted to destroy the current world order that the Shinigami and Central 46 had created. He would naturally want to seek to redress the wrongs he felt were done by them, even if the Shiba were one of the most heated rivals of the Tuna Yashiro since ancient times. While it is true that things like the Shiba's lack of effort to maintain their nobility, along with the loss of very important and powerful members of their family, contributed to their downfall, we believe there were far more nefarious plots that were hatched, and this wasn't a simple case of a family's fall from grace due to some disgraceful acts. Neimas Zanactos are not the first Zanactos, despite him being called the creator of Zanactos. One of the most iconic features of Bleach is the legendary weapon wielded by the Shinigami, known as Zanactos. During the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, it was revealed that the Zanpakuto were created by Nemaya, a member of the Zero Squad who developed the concept of Asauchi or Zanpakuto spirits. Every Shinigami was given a Zanpakuto with an Asauchi upon whom they could imprint their soul, transforming both the wielder and the weapon into more powerful versions of themselves. The weapon would gain more power as the connection between the Zanpakuto spirit and the wielder grew stronger, eventually leading to, in rare cases, awakening its Bonkai and Shikai. However, what if we were to tell you that the Zanpakuto created by the Nemiya weren't the first Zanpakuto to have been created? The Ameno Mushua is said to have been the spirit weapon the Soul King himself created using the body and soul of the Reo himself. It is this mighty weapon that he used in his crusade against the Menos in the primordial world and is widely regarded as the precursor to all Zanpakuto. Like most things related to the Soul King, even after his betrayal, the weapon held immense power. While many believed that the sword was given to the Shiba clan for safekeeping, the other families feared that they would use it to free the Soul King and, therefore, had it sealed away forever. There is an alternate tale to this story in which the noble families, fearing that the Shiba clan would grow too powerful with this weapon in their hands, decided to reforge it into smaller weapons. This is how the 5 families received their Shinkens, which were created from the fragments of the Ameno Mushua, as its powers were considered too strong for any one individual to wield on their own. The Shinken are basically Zanpakutos who don't have any one single particular owner. They are immensely powerful blades, having been forged from the blade of the Soul King himself, but they always have some sort of drawback to them as they were created through the act of betrayal. For example, the Enra Kyoten, which is the Shinken of the Tuna Yashiro family, allows its wielder to use any ability they've witnessed in their lifetime from a bladed weapon before or after they come in possession of the Shinken. This allows the wielder of the Enra Kyoten to use all the Bankai or Shikai they have witnessed, as shown by Tokunada in his battle. However, it slowly sucks away the life force of its wielder in exchange for such tremendous power. The Muramasa Shinken, which belongs to the Kuchiki family, has the ability to dominate the Zanpakuto spirit of every Zanpakuto in its vicinity. It can then force the Zanpakuto spirit of the sword to materialize and go against their own masters. These weapons were in existence far before Nemiya ever created the first Zanpakutos as we know them. Even Hyosobe's weapon, Ichimonji, is far more ancient than the weapons created by Nemiya. These are the reasons why we believe that while Nemiya might be touted as the creator of the Zanpakuto, they have existed long before his time. The Ameno Mushua might not exist, but its legacy endures within the halls of its master's betrayers, and while the blades forged from it might grant them extraordinary powers, it continues to exact a heavy toll in exchange. The Hog Yoku is Soul King's artificial heart. The Hog Yoku is a magical orb that makes the deepest desires of its wielder or the people around it manifest into reality. It's capable of incredible feats like removing the lines that divide a Shinigami from a hollow, granting either species the power of the other, as seen with the creation of the Vizards and the Arankars. There were 2 incomplete Hog Yoku at a point in history. One was created by Sosuke Eizen, while the other was created by Keisuke Urahara. However, both of their Hog Yokus remained incomplete, especially Eizen's, despite him feeding it the souls of hundreds of citizens from the Rukongai district. After learning about Urahara's Hog Yoku, he sought to offer it to his own in the hopes of finally completing it. However, Urahara would hide the Hog Yoku in Rukia's chest where the heart was, hoping it would go undiscovered as he had failed to deactivate it successfully. Eizen would catch wind of this and set up the elaborate plot that we see in the anime, which allows him to steal the Hog Yoku from Rukia and fuse it with his own, causing it to be completed. He later embeds it into his chest, where it remains until his defeat at the hands of Ichigo. It's important to note where both these characters place the Hog Yoku, as they both place it in the chest where the heart is located. Further, just like the real heart of the Soul King, which was manifested in Gerard Valkyrie, it brings back Eizen stronger than ever in a new form every time he's seriously damaged or pushed into a corner. The Hog Yoku is said to grant wishes, and one must note that the wishes that it grants are no ordinary wish, but are all miraculous in nature, and the power of the real heart is the power of miracles. It only makes sense for an imitation of it to have some limitations and not be as effective as the original. Further, we do know that the Hog Yoku does contain a fragment of the Soul King, namely his nail within it. It is, therefore, powered by the power of the Soul King. Eizen even uses the term miracles when talking about all the things that were manifesting around Ichigo and his friends thanks to the Hog Yoku. Just as Gerard Valkyrie rises up each time, having attained a higher state of being, the Hog Yoku allows Eizen to transcend his Shinigami form and become a higher being as well. If the power of an item that can literally allow someone to become a god cannot be termed as a miracle, we don't know what can. The point is that both Gerard Valkyrie's original ability and Hog Yoku's are transformative in nature, making them similar. We aren't saying that they aren't exactly the same because no imitation really is, and that is what the Hog Yoku is, an imitation of the Soul King's heart. What can be debated is whether Urahara and Eizen meant to create an artificial heart of the Soul King or just so happened to stumble into creating the exact same item that had similar properties to it. When Tesai first comes into contact with the object, he mentions that it emitted an aura that was so intense that it felt stifling to be in its presence and that it was unlike anything that he had felt within Soul Society. This perfectly describes how the powers of the Soul King feel to those who come across them for the first time. At the end of the day, we can conclude that the Hog Yoku's powers are just a watered-down version of the heart's. Considering all this evidence we've laid out before you regarding this argument, do let us know your thoughts regarding this particular issue. Putting aside whether its creators intended it to be so, do you think that the Hog Yoku is an artificial Soul King heart? Pachchi was actually a vasto lord. Just hear us out on this one before you get your pitchforks out. We all know about the cycle of souls and how the Soul Reapers don't actually kill the Hollows, but purify them so they can be reborn within Soul Society. What if Pachchi was actually a vasto lord who had been defeated by a Shinigami and reborn as a purified soul in Soul Society? However, due to his previous nature, karma had him reborn into the worst and most lawless district in the entirety of Soul Society. We know that souls retain a lot of their powers and abilities even after they change forms, as seen when Seiya Leporo seems to have retained much of his form and powers during his brief appearance in the Hell Arc one-shot manga. It also might not be a stretch to consider that a Vasto Lord-level Hollow's purification might go differently than an ordinary one, leading to it retaining much of its former strength. This could explain why even as a young child, Zaraki had monstrous strength within him, making him able to take on even Unohana, who held the title of Kenpachi at the time. We also don't know the origins of his parents, we just know that he was found wandering the streets of Zaraki, fighting for his survival against the lowlives that dwelt in the region. This could also explain his Bonkai transformation, where he literally grows horns and takes on the appearance of an Oni from Japanese mythology, perhaps hinting at his darker origins. Even after his training with Unohana during the final arc, Kenpachi is only able to master the very basics of Shinigami techniques like Shunpo and Kido, as he basically relies on his physical strength. This could be because, as a former Vasto Lord, he is unable to grow proficient in Shinigami techniques like this. Considering his power levels and brutish nature, he could not have been an ordinary soul that reached Soul Society and was thrust into its underbelly while being exceptionally powerful from childhood. Our theory is that he had to have at least been a very powerful Adjukas class Hollow, if not a Vasto Lord, prior to his purification. One more reason why we believe this is because most of the powerful Shinigami in the Gotei 13 either belong to a major or minor noble house. Those who don't belong to any noble lineage but are still extremely Zaraki, who reeks of bloodlust even as a child. The concept of corruption of innocence is a theme far too great for Kubo to ignore, and we think there's a reason why Kenpachi's origins were written in this manner. Let us know what your thoughts are on this down below. Eizen knew about Ukora's second resurrection, despite the Espada claiming otherwise. You know the popular meme about how everything is actually Eizen's plan? Well, in this case, it could be more than just a meme. Considering the fact that the Arankars were created by Eizen and knowing how meticulous and shrewd he is, it really isn't hard to believe that he would have known about Ukora's Secunda Etapa, especially since it's such a unique power. Eizen, after all, is a scientist. From the creation of the Hog Yoku to the Arankars, this guy has experimented on almost everything. A mutation like the one seen in Ukora would hardly go unnoticed by someone as observant as him. We believe the reason he left Ukora back in Las Noches was to truly test how far Ichigo had come in his evolution. This was just another experiment by Eizen, with him either expecting Ichigo to come out on top by defeating Ukora, proving himself strong enough for Eizen to finally take him slightly seriously, or getting killed in the process, proving to be a disappointment. Ichigo, however, survives but is barely alive and receives only a temporary boost in power that is never again seen on its own. This proves two things to Eizen. Ichigo was indeed not powerful enough, and he was right to consider only the top 3 Espada to be powerful enough to take Karakura town. The villain of the Hell Arc is someone familiar, and Ichigo and his friends will be forced to fight against them, corrupted versions of their allies. Tite Kubo published the one-shot Bleach New Breaths from Hell in 2021, fanning massive speculation and hope amongst the fans for the release of a new Bleach arc, which they called the Hell Arc. In this manga, we learn that the gates of hell are being pried open from the inside due to the deaths of figures like Yuvok and Yamamoto, who have removed the pressure that their Ryotsu had been keeping on the gate. The situation had been further aggravated by the torrents of souls pouring into hell due to the massive casualties caused by the Shinigami and Quincy War. We find out that 12 years after the death of a captain, a ritual known as the Kanso Reisi is performed, which is very similar to the Reisi ritual that is performed by the Shinigami to purify souls so they can transcend to soul society. This ritual is, however, slightly more elaborate, as the purification of a captain's soul is more complicated due to the amount of reishi that they're made up of. This process involves the killing of hollows in front of the deceased captain's grave. This part of the ritual is done because a captain's soul is made out of such dense reishi that it cannot be absorbed back into nature by normal means. During the hunt for the hollow required for the sacrifice during the Kanso Reisi for the Jushiro Ukitake, the lieutenants are attacked by hell beasts, followed by the appearance of Zael Aporo, the number 8 Espada. It is here that the true revelation of the nature of the ritual is made by him to the lieutenants and by Shunsui Kyoraku to the captains respectively. We, along with the cast of Bleach, learn that the Kanso Reishi is not truly a ritual that helps in the absorption of the captain's reishi back to nature, because souls with such dense reishi are impossible to assimilate back into nature and, if left unchecked, can cause severe harm to the balance of the world and the Seirei Tai. The Kanso Reisi is a ritual that sends these powerful reishi-dense souls to eternal damnation. This means that every powerful Shinigami that has ever died, including the likes of Unohana, Yamamoto, Ukitake, and the original Gotei 13, are all within the Hell dimension. This is further confirmed by Zael Aporo himself. The fact that Zael refers to Retsu Unohana as the Angel of Death tells us that a hierarchy similar to that in the Soul Society exists within Hell as well. He also talks about the Warden of Hell, who seems to be an extremely powerful being, as the former Espada credits it for recognizing Ichika as Renji's daughter. The job of a warden in a prison is to ensure its smooth running and to see that the inmates are kept in check. Hell is a kind of prison here, within which reside the damned souls of the dead. Hell represents true stagnation, a theme which is pervasive throughout Bleach. There's no mobility of souls damned to hell, and they're there for all eternity. The fact that the gates of hell were being forcefully closed thanks to the immense reiatsu of the powerful individuals means that this damnation business isn't done willingly. This makes sense, as who would willingly spend all of eternity in hell? This leads us to our next point. Even though the warden's job is the smooth running of hell, eternity is a long time, and at some point, we believe that this warden decided that he wanted to break free from his shackles as the jailer of the damned. Since hell's hierarchy seems to be comprised of familiar faces like Unohana and Yamamoto, we wouldn't be surprised if the warden was someone that Ichigo and co were familiar with. We believe that the original warden is dead, and his powers have been usurped by a powerful soul that has recently entered hell. This soul could be rallying the forces of hell and corrupting them with its influence. While we cannot for sure pinpoint one particular character for this role, our guess, for now, is that it will be Yamamoto Genryusai, as his powers were literally the flames of hell, and one of his Bankai's abilities was to raise and control the dead, along with his love for order, making hell a perfect landscape for him to operate in. We also know that Yamamoto was a ruthless killer in the past who led other ruthless criminals and murderers during their fight with the Quincy 1,000 years prior to the events of the series. His hands are soaked in blood, he's powerful, and his powers relate to hell from the flames to the ability to raise the dead. Therefore, we believe he's the prime candidate to be the villain of the next arc. Eizens Bonkai's ability is crazier than we thought. Sosuke Eizens Bonkai is perhaps the most anticipated Bonkai in all of Bleach and the least likely to be seen as well. Given the fact that his Shikai Kyoka Suigetsu is more powerful than a lot of Bonkais out there, it's hard to imagine what his sword's ultimate release could be capable of. It was speculated for a long time by some fans that Eizen did not have a Bonkai. This could not be true because to become a captain outside of an exceptional case like Kenpachi Zaraki, one of the prerequisites was the individual needed to have acquired their Bonkai. For a character obsessed with furthering his own existence, the first step would have been to reach the pinnacle of his potential as a Shinigami. Therefore, it's unlikely that Eizen would not have put in the work to acquire his Bonkai. This is confirmed in the Can't Fear Your Own World novel, where we are told that Eizen does indeed have a Bonkai, but in order for it to be effective, the individuals he's targeting have to already be under the influence of his Shikai. While there's not enough information out there regarding his Bonkai, from what we do know about his Shikai and other illusory type Zanpakuto, we do have a theory in mind. We know Kyuka Suigetsu is a shikai that puts anyone who witnesses its release under complete hypnosis. When Eizen says complete hypnosis, he means complete as the ability affects all 5 senses of the target. This allows Eizen to create deception at a level that cannot be replicated by anyone else. We know that illusory Zanpakutos like Shinji and Rose can literally affect the reality of their targets. Rose's Kinshara Butodan literally turns whatever his opponent experiences under its illusion into reality. For example, during his battle against Mask du Masculin, when the Stern Ritter is under the illusion that he's getting burned, he actually gets burnt in reality. Rose is nowhere near the same power level as Eizen, and Kyuka Suigetsu is a far more superior illusory Zanpakuto than either Shinji or Rose's. We believe that with his Bonkai, Eizen can literally warp the reality of his victims. He can probably make them live out entire lifetimes within the span of hours if he so chooses. Eizen's Bonkai allows him to place his victims under an eternal illusion of his choice without the limitations of his shikai. If Eizen chooses, he can easily put the entire world under his rule using this technique. However, he doesn't do so because he's the ultimate narcissist. Eizen is self-obsessed with himself and believes himself to be above all creatures in the world. Therefore, he would consider it to be stooping low to control such inferior beings with illusions when he could do so with sheer force. It wouldn't be a stretch to think that Eizen's Bonkai's effects could be so potent that it would have the same properties as Kinshara Butodan's, where the victim's experience turns into reality. We couldn't possibly do a video regarding Bleach theories without talking about Eizen's Bonkai. This is our take on this hotly debated and speculative topic. Let us know what your opinions are regarding this matter in the comments down below. Shunsui Kyoraku is Eizen's father. We thought we would leave you with the wildest theory we've heard so far regarding this series. Shunsui Kyoraku and Eizen, for the hawk-eyed viewers, bear an uncanny resemblance to one another. For an author who's well known for his unique character designs, it's unlikely that Kubo did this on purpose. Kaien Shiba looks like Ichigo because they are related the same way Shihoin siblings also resemble one another. There's a clear genealogical appearance template that Kubo has established in Bleach. Just look at Kyoraku carefully, minus the beard. He has the same facial structure, hair, and eye color as Eizen. We know that Shinigamis age extremely slow, an example of which is Unohana, who, despite being over 1,000 years old, still looks old enough to be Aizen's sister. Many people believe that Aizen's mother was Shinji's twin sister who joined Squad 8 under the captaincy of Kyoraku. The reason for this connection is the nature of their Zanpakuto. It is shown that powers and abilities in Bleach can be hereditary, as seen by both Isshin and Ichigo being able to use Getsuga Tensho. We know that Kyoraku's Bonkai has reality-bending abilities and is able to create pocket dimensions to engage in its various deadly scenarios. Since his mother is allegedly Shinji's twin and Shinji has an illusion-type Zanpakuto, it would make sense that his twin would have powers similar to those she passed down to her son. This could perfectly explain Aizen's Zanpakuto's powers and why, despite being a relatively unknown person, he has such high Reiatsu. This is because he's the son of a captain and a member of a minor noble house. We know that this theory is a bit of a stretch and we would like you to take it with a pinch of salt, but you can't deny that it's certainly an intriguing take on Aizen's origins. Marvelous verdict! We're wrapping up here, but we'd love to give an honorable mention to the theory that mentions Pachchi is the embodiment of the Soul King's bloodlust. The world of Bleach fandom is rife with fan theories and headcanons, and one can literally get lost for hours on end down this rabbit hole. Believe us. We've included some of our original theories along with the ones we found the most intriguing on the web for your viewing pleasure. At Marvelous Anime, we love theory crafting and talking about lore possibilities. It lets us venture into wild and unexplored territories of the stories that we all love and adore. Thanks to the world created by Kubo, Bleach allows our fans to do just that. We'd love to hear some of your own headcanons and theories in the comments down below, and remember that while these are mostly theories, one can only hope that Kubo will expand on these topics in the future. If this kind of speculative theory crafting video piques your interest, do let us know what other animes we should cover in a similar fashion. For now though, we've arrived at the end of our video. At Marvelous Anime, we cover all of your favorite anime and manga, so there's something special for everyone. After you're done here, be sure to check out the rest of our catalog. Thanks for watching right to the end. We're only able to do what we do thanks to you and your support. Until next time, stay safe and stay marvelous.